all that I think stems really from reflecting, I think that reflection is something that allows for resetting. It allows for coming back a stronger you. And like I said earlier, I don't think that we should wait till the end of the year to be able to allow that to happen. So what up?
Yo, how's it going, bro? Long time no see.
It's been a minute, literally a minute. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Damn, Happy New Year, my guy. Happy New Year.
Gosh, is it already 2021?
What do you mean, is it already? Weren't you waiting for this the whole time?
Yeah, I know, but it's just, just the way that time passed, and it's like, you wake up the next day and it's not like you feel really all that different. You're just like, whoa, we're in 2021,
Yeah, no, definitely feel you on that. I feel like every week we always say, man, this week flew by. And I'm like, every week feels like that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are rarely weeks that I'm like, damn, this took so long. Like,
Yeah. Like, the days really have, and for the most part of this year, they've really melted into each other. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be fairly honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that's likely due to because like there's a lot less change. It's like, usually you'd like go to a restaurant on this week and you went out then traveled to this country or whatever and did this and that, and you had like all these different events that you could kind of separate in your head in terms of months and days and whatever. But like,
yeah, for sure.
Right now it's like, well, what did I do last week? Stay at home. What did you do the week before that? Stay at home.
Stay
right?
home. Yep.
So I think
what I'm going to do today? Stay at home.
what are you going to do? Yeah, actually, a friend of mine, so I put a picture of like my planner because I got my new planner for 2021. Shout out to anyone who uses physical written planners. I know y'all out there, but yeah, I try to use it as much as I can. I really like the tactile feel of it. But I posted this picture and someone responded to my story and said something like, fill in every box with stay at home. And it was just so random that I didn't understand what she was saying, and I was like, well, what? And then I took like 10 minutes just looking at her message because I was like, she's a nice person, so I was like, why would she say this? And I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you mean now. But yeah, that's facts, literal facts of 2020.
Yeah, well, for the most part, at least we can relish in the fact that we can at least still run outside for the most part.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we just crushed another 10K this morning. Gorgeous weather, a little bit of windy, but
sort of gorgeous weather.
Well, when you think about January, it's kind of a sad thing because of global warming. But it's nice to be able to go running in January at -6 degrees.
Yeah. To be fair, when you're in continental climate, middle of Canada, Winnipeg, and you've got no natural barriers to protect you from, the harshest of the elements, I guess -6. Is pretty damn mild for January. So I guess we'll take it. Better than you running in -29 last week. So
yeah, that was a hustle. And I don't know. I felt like that was like the hardest thing. I told myself if I can overcome. So for those who don't know, I completed 100 kilometers of running in December. And mind you, I don't think I've ever ran more than like 50K in a month. So for me, it was a good challenge, and shout out to my boy, Create Greg. He's a YouTuber, and this inspo came from a video that I saw from him, and he's a small YouTuber by any means, but he's someone that I connected through an online community of filmmakers, and I just stumbled on one of his videos. He put up that he had just ran 100 kilometers with his girlfriend. And, I was really inspired by it, and I just said, why not? And I decided to go through and continue with this challenge for 100K during the month. And I said, I'll wait till summer, but I just didn't think that, if I can make it in 100 kilometers in December, I can make, pretty much anything else happen, because it was cold. And like you said, I ran 10K in -29, and definitely feel proud about it. So yeah, shout out to Greg, shout out to all those who supported me, and shout out to you for coming on those 10K runs on Saturdays. That really kept me going for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure, and especially with the morning view this morning, I really felt more inclined to really push for a run. I mean, we had something to stare at while we were going, but I mean, this is the first time I've ever gone running in the winter. But I mean, last week our last podcast was all about resolutions, and improving my physical is one of those big ones, and having somebody to help push that mantle is always appreciated. I'm just really happy with the results lately. Like I'm glad that like we can actually push through 10K and still have enough energy to come home and record a podcast.
No, that's fair. And like I told you, like last night I didn't sleep very well. Had a long conversation helping out a friend here, but it was definitely draining. And then I had to wake up early, had a Skype with some people in Japan, and then we go for a run, and then we got a podcast. We got a busy day. Job's not done, but blessed that I'm still in good enough shape to be able to continue and not, well, we'll see by the end of this podcast, but hopefully not be too crazy.
But you know what? It's also a little bit of a blessing that you can be this busy while you're at home.
Yeah. I mean, true facts.
I mean, the fact is, you and I mean, whether it be by virtue of the fact that we can create things to do for ourselves, there have been points where I've been overwhelmed by the amount of things that I've had to, that I've had to face on my task list, and doing it all home. I mean, it's about it's the equivalent of actually just, having it without like the restrictions or anything like that. But it's just the fact that we can keep ourselves that busy and keep our craft going as much as we can despite restrictions, I think is actually a blessing,
100%. And I think that kind of segues into what we want to talk about today of that mentality switch, that resetting aspect that a lot of us probably want to include in our new approach to going into 2021, right?
Right.
As we mentioned in the last podcast, 2020, and I mean, everyone knows 2020 was a rough year. A lot of things, but as you mentioned, the fact that we were able to stay extremely busy during this time, I think, is still a blessing. And I was doing some, usually at like pivotal moments like Thanksgiving, New Year's, I usually send out messages to some of the people who are most important to me, and who had a big impact on me during a certain amount of time, or etc. And I reached out to one of a huge inspiration for me, who's Emmett Sparling, massive creator on Instagram, great travel stuff, great person as well. I'm blessed to know him as a friend, and I reached out to him, and I don't script this at all. I literally just press record and start talking about, because I wanted to be authentic, right? And I started telling him how I was inspired by him continuing, because he traveled a lot this year. He did a lot of stuff in BC, but he went to French Polynesia. He was doing lots of stuff like underwater. He did some whale photography. Like it looked like 2020 was still like a normal year to him. And some part of me was like a little bit like, man, that sucks. Like I wish I could do that too. But then again, another part of me was extremely motivated and inspired by the fact that he did not let COVID-19 get the better of him. Obviously there's the, touchy aspect of travel, and, there's definitely like arguments to both of that side, but I just think that it was inspiring to me to be able to be like, yo, this guy actually went all in on this, and he didn't let like COVID stop him from doing that. So that's something I feel like we're both doing. We're making the best out of what we have. A lot of music's coming out, which is something that we can definitely do during COVID, and this podcast kind of sparked through this. So I think that resetting your mind or reshaping it into something that's positive regardless of the negatives that are happening, I think is definitely something that we can, all try to tie into our 2021. I don't know about you, but let me know your thoughts.
Here's the thing, like when we first formulated the topic of discussion for this podcast, which was resetting in 2021, initially, I went into this with the mindset of, every time the new year hits around, you hear the whole phrase, new year, new me, right? And I don't resonate with that at all, and I feel like less people will resonate with that, given what we've all had to been through, have to have gone through. Just because, like, if 2020 has taught me anything, it's to learn from your experience, right? So, and I mean, since you're always constantly improving, it's not like you're gonna go from, like, December 31st, 11:58 p.m., and then all of a sudden it's January 1st, like 12:01 a.m., and it's like, oh my god, like, I'm a new person, let's go. I feel like it's important to understand, like, you can absolutely use the new year as a milestone. It's just like, and really it is, like, getting to January 1st, and, like, I'm blessed to still have my physical health, my mental health, my family, my friends, my support group, a job, like, all these things. I'm very happy and very blessed to have all these things still with me going into 2021. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that making it this far and making it to this milestone is just a reminder of, like, how much harder we have to take it upon ourselves to continue to improve and just be better people, right? And I feel like that should just be a mentality you should be carrying with you all the time, right? And you don't need the new year rolling in to tell you that. The other thing is too, and I'm sort of speaking out my butt here, but, like, I feel like a lot of people are thinking that 2021 is going to be like, oh, well, we survived the year 2020, so, that's it. Like, COVID's done, everything's going to be back to normal this year. And as much as we want that, we have to carry, like, we still have to walk into 2021 with everything that 2020, like, poured down upon us. It doesn't just go away because time moved forward. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's just sort of my general thinking going into 2021. And that's the caution that I think I want to discuss with you when it comes to the new year and resetting. Mm-hmm. And also tying into our last discussion about resolutions,
Right.
Anyway, yeah. So, your thoughts on, like, how to reset and what to do with resetting?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned there, because one, that last thing when you said, like, sorry, I'm losing a train of my thought. What you just said, remind me.
Which part? I talked a lot about going into 2021, with still holding on to what 2020 did to us, essentially.
Yeah, sorry, just the last part. Like, guys, this is super authentic. This is how Danilo and I talk. We completely forget what we were just about to say all the time. But no, you just mentioned, you said the resetting and, like, people thinking they change from day to night. I understand that. But then you mentioned sorry. So 2020, the COVID thing. So yeah, people are thinking, we survived 2020 and now we're in 2021. Yay, 2021, life goes back to normal, but it's not. COVID is still a thing, and in my opinion, it's still going to be a thing until at least November, at least the winter. Like, that vaccine has been declared and announced and being released in certain places, but we don't know the effects of that vaccine. I'm not going to shoot myself up with that vaccine. I'm going to let people, if they want to die because this vaccine, and mind you, I'm being very insensitive because some people really, some people have died from COVID. So I understand that, we have to push science forward, and, taking this vaccine definitely helps with that. But, there's consequences, and, like, I can hold on. Fortunately, like, as you mentioned, I still have my health, family, etc., job. So I can hold on right now in my current state and not have to try to, like, beat 2021 now. And, I feel like that's going to bring an even bigger level of depression, a bigger level of anxiety, because, everyone has built up this pressure. Like, during 2020, I don't know if you remember the first pandemic, but everyone was saying, like, oh, you guys better be productive during the pandemic. Like, if you come out of this pandemic saying that, like, you didn't have time to do what you wanted to do, that's an excuse. And that's just, like, right there. That's a, like, message right there in your head that you're being like, you're not being productive. And that's creating depression right there. Like that's creating pressure. And then, so everyone's like, okay, 2020, like, okay, so we're going to build in 2020 and then we're going to launch in 2021. But like 2021, in my opinion, I mean, we'll see how it rolls out, but we don't know how it's going to turn. So like setting those expectations of like, yeah, we going to make this happen at this point, I think is just like, I'm not saying you can't do anything. This is literally what we're doing. We're putting in time, but I just feel like a lot of people are going to set like high expectations. They built throughout 2020. They really are going to push for 2021, try to either build a company, launch a brand, but there's still the same obstacles. And if you don't adapt to it in a proper way, I think that you're going to run into challenges again. So that's kind of just touching on just that aspect of like people thinking that we survived 2020,
Mm-hmm. Well, like, unfortunately, we don't get a I Survived 2020 participation medal at the end of the year.
But, man, that's another podcast right there, participation medals.
oh, no. Okay, all right. Yeah, I know we can go about that all day.
Yeah.
But like how you mentioned, because I saw that post myself on Instagram going around the whole, you got to be productive while we're in lockdown. And I was like, what sort of audacity do you have to tell other people around you, you got to do this, this, and that? Because productivity to somebody, especially let's take, for example, somebody who's fighting like a mental battle in their head that is affected by everything going on in lockdown, right? And God forbid you live alone and you can't reach any of your friend and family because you have to stay at home, right? Like maybe just making it to the end of the day while dealing with everything going on in your head is productive. Like literally getting yourself out of bed and going about your day without having a breakdown is productive, right? I mean, great to all the people who, developed new skills, discovered passions, all that sort of stuff while we were in lockdown. But everybody, like productivity looks very different to everybody. It's subjective, right? I mean, no, actually, technically, it's not necessarily subjective. It can be technically quantifiable, right? But for the most part, like, it's not like we were responsible to be. There was no responsibility to be productive. It would have been better. It would have been a great way to pass your time, instead of just literally sitting around doing the same thing like while you're in lockdown. Because even me, I wouldn't want to say that I just sat on my butt like the entire lockdown and came out with nothing. And I can definitely say, and I'm proud to say this, that I actually can say that I came out with a lot out of 2020. But if you didn't, or if you feel like you didn't, and just trying to survive 2020 and the lockdowns, I'm not holding that against you if like, that's all you were able to do, because it was a tough year. Like this was more, I mean, great for all the people who are able to like thrive despite everything happening. That just demonstrates how much adaptability you have. But if like, I feel like the sole purpose for this year was more to survive. So if you survive, good for you. Like, you should be proud of yourself for, making it this far at least. Now tying that into resetting, I'm just reiterating on the fact that like making it to 2021 is a guidepost. It's a milestone. But just because you've hit the milestone doesn't mean that all of a sudden, you're a new you, right? Only you get to make the new you, right?
Right. No, and I want to touch on those 2 points because you brought that in the other point that you were saying. So one, I think that there's a huge amount of pressure in terms of being productive. And anyone who's listening, there's a really good podcast by Yes Theory. I think it's called like The Problem with Productivity. And shout out to my friend Bella who sent it to me because she was concerned about me being overwhelmed. And it talks about overwhelmment, and it speaks on productivity and this kind of mentality that our brain has created, our society has created, that we always have to be productive. So we always have to be, doing something. We always have to be productive. So like it ends up being a burden in your head. And that's something that I've definitely dealt with, gone through, I would say like a long lasting burnout, and I'm trying to really reset going into 2021. So I think that's a valid point that you're mentioning. And like, I said the quote like, well, better have made something happen out of your time. Like, stop putting excuses, because if you're saying you don't have time, you now have all the time in the world. I think the intent behind that quote is good. I think what they're saying is that like they're portraying a bigger picture of like people putting excuses in front of themselves all the time. And I think that in itself is the problem. And I think if you can realize that and be like, you know what, I need to stop putting excuses, then, because it is true. Like, we always say we don't have time, but as you know, Drake said it, you know, you make time for the things that you want. Just kidding. It's not just Drake, but, you know, I think that's one important thing, is like just realizing those excuses. I think that was the intent of that quote. And it just seems everyone takes it so personally, and you take it like you're attacking yourself. That's because you have insecurities, because maybe you're not being productive, because maybe you're putting excuses in front of yourself, you know, maybe that is true. And that's why it hurts. Anyways, that's one thing I wanted to touch on the productivity aspect, because yeah, there is a lot of pressure. And I think that like being productive is something that you can set your own definition to, which you kind of mentioned. You know, surviving is being productive. Are you advancing in terms of what society set? No. Are you advancing in what you want to become? That's the difference, you know? So if you had a day without worrying about social media, without, you know, worrying about what your ex thought of you or whatever, you know, sorry, I'm just saying real stuff.
No,
you know, that's stuff that you and I both deal with. So like, you know, like thinking about, and I'm pretty sure we're not the only ones who deal with this, but anyways, you know, having a day where you're like, okay, you know, I did okay and I didn't think about anything, I had a good day, then you made progress, my guy. You know, you made progress. And that's the thing, is like people aren't quantifying this. You know, it's hard to quantify that because it's not a post on social media. It's not a number, you know. Well, put numbers to it, you know, go back to your journal and say, okay, today I had a good day. And at the end of the month, you're going to be like, well, I had 3 good days. That's better than last month. You know, like start quantifying those kind of things, I think is a kind of attitude we can go on to. But I kind of also, I know I'm taking up this, oh man, I'm getting hella heated right now. Like there's so much good stuff about this, but like resetting from like December 31st, like 12 or 11:58, and like, no, it doesn't happen on that. And it was a good thing that you and I were chatting off camera the other day, and you were telling like it was amazing to look back through all the stories of the accomplishments and things that you did during the year, and to kind of change that. Like, it's awesome to have a New Year's. It does feel new. It does feel fresh. It feels different, even though it's not different at all. It's the same thing. But I think that one of the things that we can all do, and I told you this, I said, why don't we incorporate, instead of a self-review or at the end of the year, include a self-review at the end of the month, at the end of the week, at the end of the day. The more you do that, the more you realize, okay, like, man, I did a hell of a lot of things this year. Like I did a lot of things this week, and it may not be massive amount at the, like, in your eyes, you're like, well, I had all this to-do list, and I only did 3 of those things. But you do 3 of those things every week, man, you made a lot of stuff happen. So I feel like a lot of people sell themselves a little too short. They think that, I don't know if that's the right expression, but they think that they are, like, they give themselves too much, not enough credit for what they do. Sorry.
That, and you know what, I remember that being something that came up in conversations a lot since we became friends, was to just give yourself enough credit. Like, personally, before coming to record this podcast, I was having a lot of, I don't even know if I want to call it depression or anxiety or whatever, but I was feeling pretty low energy, and I couldn't get out of that muck for like the longest time. I was dealing with feelings of inadequacy and thinking about the future, uncertainty, and thinking of the past, stress, right? Because, and then at some point, like Vince said, I went through my Instagram stories and just started posting like rapid fire all the things that I did since January 1st, 2019. And once, like he said, I quantified them, like I literally had put them out there and I saw, wow, I had X amount of things happen. I was like, my goodness, I got a lot of stuff done this year. Like, I did a lot of things. I connected with a lot of great people. When restrictions were like temporarily lifted, we made the best of it. Like, I mean, it probably didn't serve us very well, obviously, because of our numbers, but in the short amount of time we were all able to see each other a little bit, you know, we kind of tried to make the best of it we could, right? Not to mention, you know, like I haven't really been updating it, but I started a vlog, you know, that's a great thing. Made a lot of I mean, I'm always making music, but actually released a lot of music, collaborated with tons of artists, some of them remotely, right? And after like reviewing all this stuff, all of a sudden I'm just like, geez, like, what am I beating myself up for? Like, I demonstrated that I was capable of making the best of the kind of crappy hand that we were dealt with, right? And I hope for anybody else out there that you can sort of find a way to make the hand that you're dealt with work for you, right? Because that's exactly what life is about, right? It's not about like hoping for the best hand to be dealt with. It's like it's using the hand that you're dealt with and using it like it's the hand that you wanted. You know?
So yeah, I do think kind of this might be a little like going back to what I was saying, like, you know, making reflections more of a thing on a more consistent basis, I think is definitely something, you know, that can help with the resetting, you know, that mentality that you can reset quicker rather than just resetting every year. You know, you don't want to wait a year to notice the trends that you're doing things not in the way that are, you know, authentic to who you are or in the intention that you want to be doing. You know, I think that there's a lot of value that can be taken from, you know, doing more reflection on a more frequent basis. So like going back and be like, hey, what did I do this week? You know, so I think that that's something that's like, you know, definitely valuable for all of us. You know, and I just remembered what I want to talk about. Okay, we're going, anyways, more editing. So yeah, basically, like you mentioned, like, you know, that you were able to quantify your stories, right?
Yes.
And one thing we talked about last time in our podcast episode number 1 was the way that goal setting has been made traditionally in the business world, which is a technique called SMART, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's specific and measurable. So when you set your goals, when you set your intentions, when you set your New Year's resolution, having that specific and measurable makes it a lot easier to come back at the end of the week, at the end of the month, rather than waiting till the end of 2020 and then realizing you didn't achieve your goals. You know, if you go back at the end of the week and you're like, I didn't put enough time towards this. But what is enough time? Did I spend 1 hour? What's enough time? Like for you, if you were like, well, I read 30 minutes and like that's the most you've ever read in your life, then that's awesome, you know? But for me, I'm like, well, I need to read at least like an hour or 15 minutes every day. So that's like about like 3 hours at the end of the week kind of thing. So right. That is probably terrible math. But the point being that like, I think that like quantifying stuff is a good way to self-measure, but not just in a negative way at the end of the week being like, well, I'm a piece of crap and I didn't achieve anything, but rather in the sense that like you can also quantify it in a positive way. So at the end of the week, we can be like, well, I achieved this, this, and this. At the end of the month, I achieved this and this. And you may be feeling down, but you use that to reset into the next month, into the next week, if that makes sense.
Right. Just to expand more on quantifying your progress, essentially, especially in the things that maybe aren't as set in stone as, like, let's say a paycheck or your weight, you know. These are the things that really, like, you know, just like, for example, one of the big things I've been wanting to mention ever since we began the discussion was the value of journaling, because you just recently you touched on it just a little bit, but journaling and this is something I only started really taking seriously this year, to be fairly honest with you, or I guess I can say last year now.
Like, 2020 jokes already coming in.
But the way that journaling has served as a self-reflection at the end of the week has been very key for helping me move into the next week. Almost the same way that reviewing all my Instagram stories helped me move on into the next year, right? But it's not just about opening up your journal and being like, hey, this is what I was feeling. The way I sort of developed journaling was more of a weekly recap, which sort of ties into what you and I do all the time. We usually have a little bit of an accountability meeting every week to see where we were at, what we did. But part of it, usually for me, serves as a reflection of, hey, this is what I went through this week. This is what I got done. This is what I didn't get done. And then answering, if I did do it well, or if I got a lot of things done, why did I get it done so well? And what wasn't stopping me? And if I didn't do as well as I had predicted for the week, why didn't I do that well? And what can I do next week to make things better? Right? As well as just being able to tell yourself, okay, this is what I got to tackle for next week. Maybe I got to carry some stuff on from the week prior, but just setting up like that sort of thing, like in a tangible way, like it's out there. You've translated the things going on into your head into something tangible, and now you can either look back on it, you can reflect on it, and yeah. So like, yeah, journaling for me has been, I think, it's been 1, productive, 2, therapeutic, and 3. Actually, I'm not sure if I have a third point, but
good way.
It's at least the first
good way to reflect and reset, I think, is where you were going at.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
I got you.
Yeah, but yeah, no. If I would strongly suggest, and actually, the person who got me into journaling, or inspired me to journal, was Vince. To be fairly honest with you, if you can get into journaling, get into just saving an hour, like maybe at the end of the week. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be like, and believe me, once you start writing and once you start telling yourself like what you were doing in your journal, like your hand won't stop moving.
An hour is not enough.
me.
An hour is not enough.
Yeah.
But
yeah, an hour is not enough, but it's a good place to start. If you can allow yourself the same amount of time you spend browsing on your phone a day to journal, then I can guarantee you can begin to see, like, you begin to zoom out and see where you're at least a productive and mental like, stand, or I guess perspective,
I'm gonna push it one step further. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night can take you a long way. Speaking from personal experience, it's never enough. But as I was telling you, when I was going through some of the journals that I wrote, some of my journals and reflections from 2020, there's some heavy stuff, and those things all came about from 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, and then like maybe 1 hour recap at the end of the week, and like maybe a longer one at the end of the month. I'm still working on that, but anyways, I just want to interrupt because like waiting till the end of the week sometimes, like I don't know about you, but like when I've got something up here, like in here, I need this to get I literally lost my train of thought, like when we were doing this podcast, by the way. You guys probably didn't hear because it's probably edited out, but, like when you have something and you feel it, you need to put that down as soon as you can. In my opinion, like we have developed a society that is incapable of maintaining attention for more than like 6 seconds. So we forget the importance of things, and we don't, we might have felt something in one moment, and then 30 distractions later, we forgot about it. And that was like the one thing that might have changed and altered your entire day if you had focused on that and understood that and be like, every single time I'm speaking in front of a crowd, I get this type of anxiety. Why? You really got to hone in on those. So I just want to interrupt you just to say that like 15 minutes a day, even if you just do it once a day at the end of the day or whatever, can go a long way.
One of the things I like that you mentioned there was, you're trying to hold on to this one thought, and then 30 or 40 distractions later, it's gone. Because I'll use an example of when last week when me and Vince were picking up coffee, somebody went out of their way to pay for the coffee, to pay for the tabs of the two people behind them, and me and Vince were one of the people behind them, right? That small gesture, I remember just taking that, and you know what? I know this is a thing that has been done to death, like the whole pay it forward. But when it happens, despite everything going on in 2020, despite despite the pandemic, despite all the racism, despite people at each other's throats, despite people not following rules, despite everything, all that stuff, the fact that somebody in front of me paid for coffee, paid for our coffee
for someone they just don't know. Like, I think that's like the key point, is someone they have no idea who it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it just for me, like that, like I'm remembering it right now. And although this is not something new to me, just the fact that like a stranger can demonstrate an act of goodwill in such a terrible, trying time, is something that I feel like I personally needed to value more, and held kind of like, honestly, this is getting a little corny, but I really held it close to my heart, that little moment, to be fairly honest with you. And so I noticed that just because of that gesture, I was going into work just with a little less irritation. And I was dealing with the people that I've gone so used to dealing over the last couple, months with. I just felt like I was just less irritated when dealing with these kinds of people, right? Just because it was just this one random act of kindness,
So relating this to distractions, like the 30 distractions, would you say that this is like a positive type of distraction?
I wouldn't even say it's like, I didn't really call it a distraction, because it didn't really take my thought process out of anything. If anything, the actual experiencing of that gesture of goodwill augmented it itself into the way I carried myself the rest of the week, at least. Right. One of those things that and this, like, I have a small circle of friends that I make sure to wish good morning every day, because
which I'm part of.
I just want, sorry,
which I'm part of. Let's go.
Yep.
A small, low key best friend flex here.
Yeah, best friend flex. But yeah, no, like, it's just, at some point I adopted this mentality of trying my best to remember to wish the small people in my circle a good morning, because I just wanted to let them know, hey, I'm thinking of you. Like, I want to keep our conversation going. And if nobody said it to you, or if nobody's going to say it to you, I want to say it to you, because I don't know. I remember there were a lot of tougher times in the first lockdown where the stir crazy was getting to me, where the feelings of being alone and having anxiety and depression were setting in. And maybe just having a good morning at the beginning of the day would have been enough, right?
So would you say that that's like a good way to, one, reset yourself by sending out positive vibes out to other people, but also allowing them the opportunity to be like, they had a bad night last night, this guy cares about me, I appreciate you, you just helped me reset my mind to go into a positive mindset into the day. I think that small gesture probably can go a long way.
And really, I'm beginning to realize it's the small gestures, right? And this is not new information, right? But it's the little things that really can, like, they can be the things that support you that prop you up during the day. And it's also the little things that can be the chinks in, really be the chinks in your armor that eventually grow to like huge cracks and lead to you breaking apart, right? So that being said, I hope if you go forward and want to spread little gestures of goodwill, like, that you do so that, because you don't know if that one coffee or that one good morning is going to be the difference between somebody having a good start to their day or a horrible start to their day. You know what I mean? I know for me, it's been the difference. Like, it definitely has. The fact that, like, despite a trying time like this, somebody saying good morning and letting me know that they were thinking of me at least enough to just say hello, was enough. It is enough.
No, and that's fair. And I think, I don't know, I'm gonna kind of segue onto something I kind of want to talk about, because resetting it's about the intention of resetting. And like, there's a lot of people that, like, keeping positivity in your life sometimes can be also just another distraction. You know, like if your entire purpose of life is just to say good morning to everyone, and then you got that done and you feel productive, like I don't want to shit at all on what you're saying right now. I'm just saying that like sometimes I find that like it's I don't know, it can become like a distraction to people because like so many things are happening that are positive. Let me give you an example. So like girls who are like, well, I just want to hang out with my girls and just keep positive vibes, and like they hang out with some friends, and again, I don't want to like judge anyone. I'm just saying like I've definitely seen this, and like the people will say like random jokes. They'll be like, oh yeah, like girl, you get it. And it's like people who are, you know, hyping you up, but like, are they really adding to your life? But you keep them around because they don't give you negative vibes, but are they really pushing your narrative forward? So
are they really pushing your negative narrative forward? I like that.
Yeah, and it's not like, again, like 2020 you mentioned, it's not about just being like, you don't have to be productive all the time. You know, I'm someone who's inherently always trying to add stuff to my to-do list in my head. So like being productive is definitely one of my top priorities, and productivity has been proven by research that's one of the sources of happiness for a lot of people. You know, when you feel productive, you feel good. With that being said, being productive isn't something you need to do all the time. I'm learning the value of just enjoying what I'm doing in the moment. And I was actually reading this article, which I have a little bit of notes on. It's this article that's written by, I forgot his name. I'll link it in the descriptions or whatever. But it was like a YouTube video that kind of linked back to an article which talks about this feeling good in anticipation of pleasure, which is basically dopamine, right? So dopamine is this feeling that we feel, which is funny, in anticipation of pleasure, not the actual pleasure itself, right? So it's like this fantasy that we create in our head. Giving an example that's hilarious and really relatable right now. Yo, shout out to my girl Steph from the Need to Know podcast.
Oh no!
Man,
I know where this is going.
Oh boy, I can't believe I'm saying this on air. But like, there's this other podcast that you guys should check out. It's called the Need to Know podcast, and it's three Americans that are really discussing a lot of topics, and I just really love the way that they articulate everything. And in particular, I really love Steph. She's anyways, I'm like fantasizing in my head, right? But it's like it's creating, like, okay, fantasize might come off the wrong way. Like I'm just like making jokes with Danilo, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna marry this person, etc., etc. But I just really appreciate
it. Here first.
I just really, yeah. I mean, if you out there, Steph, yo, slide in DMs though. But
oh no,
man.
Oh no.
But
okay.
Just trying to illustrate the point that like anticipation of that is, I think, what's drive that dopamine. It makes like gives me energy, whatever gets me excited, whatever you want to say. But I think that our society has been built off of that. You know, again, going back to that 2020, 2021 transition, we're anticipating 2021 is going to be lit. And so we're building all this dopamine, we're building all this. And that's why I said earlier, I think that 2021 is going to be filled with depression, because what he mentions in this article, and I'm just kind of reading off the notes here, it says like when you stop, like when you get that action complete, or when you reach that, whatever you're anticipating, it leaves you with a feeling of emptiness. It leaves
That's
you,
interesting.
You know, I'll give an example of this, and this is like a very sensitive topic, but like a lot of times after a guy like releases, when he's with someone or when he's alone, whatever, they often feel guilt. You know, men will feel guilt afterward. They'll feel some type of remorse. That's a thing. But that's kind of like a very extreme topic of that, but it's a valid example in the sense that like when we feel good, it's the anticipation up to that climax, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, no, so I think that, you know, like having all this pressure of like trying to achieve something, you know, that you're building up during 2020, you know, 2021 is going to be a big hit. Now, once we get there, you know, if you're not able to reach that, one, you're going to be depressed. Once you get there, you're going to realize that sometimes the things that you want to do don't matter, or you're going to be left with that feeling of emptiness. And then people are going to get massive issues. Another thing the article kind of touches on after is like when you try to, for example, with coffee, when you try to stop drinking coffee or smoking, something you can maybe relate to, right? When you try to stop removing that, because it's a again, coffee and sex and success and money and whatever, it's usually driven by dopamine as well. Okay, so that's a bold statement, but I'm just saying, like, in the context of what we're talking about right now. Now, when you try to remove that, it creates what we call withdrawal. And like this term has come up, like, oh, withdrawal from festivals, like, you know, like people are like saying this is a joke, but withdrawals is a real thing, you know? And being in that state of like, I'm uncomfortable, I don't know how to deal with this, people don't like to do that. You know, it's an uncomfortable state to be like, well, I was anticipating all this, I was getting excited for something that's maybe not necessarily healthy. You know, you're just basing it on the end goal and not the actual path, not the actual, like, it's not the mountain, it's the climb. You know, when you're basing your entire existence on trying to get there, it's difficult to sit in that moment when you're trying not to focus on getting there. Like, it's a very, I'm not explaining this very well, but it's a very difficult spot to be in, because when you're trying to remove that fantasy, or when you're trying to remove the fact that you are, like, let's say you were to remove, man, this is actually difficult to explain, but you know, I'm having a hard time coming up with an example, but basically I'm just going to kind of go through what the article says. He says, you know, when people try to withdraw, let's say that coffee, okay, when people try to withdraw that coffee, they're going to be in a state where they really feel like they need a coffee. So this creates either boredom, stress, anxiety, and ends up creating more problems, you know, because you have to deal with not being there. So like, for example, when people are setting their goals and they're unable to reach their goals, it's going to create boredom, stress, anxiety, and ends up creating more problems internally. You know, and then people like me end up filling up their schedule with a bunch of stuff just to create that dopamine hit, just to feel like we're being productive. Back to, again, productivity being one of the sources of happiness, just to feel that dopamine of feeling productive, feeling good, that fantasy that I'm going to be accomplishing things. But then when I reach something, it ends up making me feel empty, because one, I'm either, especially if I'm doing this to try to get external validation, which I think is something that I'm trying to actively reduce out of my mental type of aura going into 2021. But, you know, it creates all these other issues. And like, when you have boredom, you're going to fill up your schedule like I do. And then that creates more stress, more anxiety, etc. So I just think that, like, you know, resetting into 2021, when you're thinking about resetting, just looking at where your intentions are, and keeping in mind that dopamine aspect. And I think they said the solution is really focusing on the here and now. That's like literally the cheesiest thing that they say, but it's true, because when you think about how do you combat expecting something, don't expect it, live it.
I like that a lot, actually.
Right? When you're expecting success, when you're expecting, you know, a climax or whatever, when you're expecting a certain goal, a certain point in your life, whatever, live it. And it's tough. It's obviously not, it's easier said than done, but I want to know your thoughts on this. And I know you kind of want to touch on a few things that I talked about probably, but he says, like, the number one way to do that, to reconnect with and resetting, is to meditate. We need to reconnect with the here and now. And the best way to do that is meditate, because who can literally sit there with their own thoughts and calm their thoughts to the point where they're not losing themselves every 12 seconds to another thought? You know, that I think right there is, again, that distraction, that dopamine, looking for something, that anxiety, you know, I feel like a lot of resetting can be done. And the article mentions that the best way is to meditate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? I 100% agree on the benefits of meditation. for example, like, and I am not an expert at entering a meditative state, but I have absolutely found myself in times where I am doing it and I'm aware that I'm doing it. And it is literally, as you said, a form of being present.
Okay, hold up. I think we're going to have to define meditation because like...
Okay, because meditating can be two things. Obviously, it could be the clearing of the mind, or it could be the reflection of everything that has happened and being present and accepting of everything that you are as of this moment.
I don't know that I would...
It could also be both.
Right. I don't know that I would agree with that definition because I think that reflection, like you're talking about meditate, like, I mean, a lot of people will say like I was meditating on the past year, and that I can totally get, but I feel like that's a little bit more on the reflection side. Obviously, like you can argue that too, but I'm talking about like legit, like sitting down and trying to calm, because like meditating, yeah, anyways, that's, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, both ways of meditating that I had just that I just talked about are both applicable, because being able to literally be present in the moment and allow that in, you know, and allow the present to flow into your mind does require an emptying of the mind, you know, and it's a lot easier said than done to empty your mind, right? It's not something that can be achieved on command. It's something that I think takes a bit of practice, and familiarity with yourself, and with the act of meditating. And like I said, I'm not 100% good at doing it, but when I can do it, I know it's happening, because there's nothing that sounds as serene, and it is as serene as that feeling, and it is a true reset in every sense of the word, because you are literally allowing new stimulus into your mind, right? The other thing that I mentioned about meditating is, like, you know, literally just meditating on the things that you that are troubling you, or are making you feel good, or that have transpired, right? And meditating in that sense is, I think, more of a coming to terms with and an acceptance of what has transpired inside you as a person, right? It's and I think both forms of meditation are very important, right? I think at some point you need to be able to literally be like, okay, I need a breath of fresh air, I need to calm down, and I just need to, like, you know, not think about anything and just be here, you know? And at the same time, I also think there is a lot of merit in understanding, like, what has happened with you and accepting it and finding a way to move on to the next phase of your being, like, literally, like, once you can come to terms with those things, right? I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I'm like shooting too far off the mark here with the way that you're describing meditation, but you know, that's I think that, like, yeah, in general, meditation is absolutely important and extremely relevant, since we're talking about, you know, resetting, right? Because yeah, it is like, at least when it comes to emptying your mind and allowing yourself to be present, I don't think there's anything that feels like a true reset than that.
Well, I mean, even after like a meditation session, if you want to call it that, I don't feel like I mean, this is something I'm trying to implement more in my life as well, is more meditation. But I just want to, like, maybe people can call this all meditation, but I just want to kind of bounce back ideas and concepts just to kind of differentiate different categories here, or different types, because, you know, when you mentioned like when you're trying to focus on something, you have to remove something out of your mind. So that in itself is meditation. And I'll give you an example. Like the other day, one of my friends, Asen, shout out to you, Asen, if you're listening, but he brought me to a gun range. And I had never gone to a gun range. Mind you, I'm terrified of guns. You know, I shot a shotgun when I was, I think, 14. Don't ask me why. Some friends were like bringing me, they're like, here, let's give a kid who's 14 years old a shotgun. Okay. I hit the target the first time, so let's go. Weird flex. But anyways, the when I was at the range, I was so focused. you know, and it's something that I also feel when I'm doing sports. When I'm doing sports, I rarely think, oh, I need to do this. I need to do that. You know, oh man, I've got bills to do. You know, I'm in the moment because I'm usually super competitive, or like at least concentrated on what I'm doing and what my skills can do. And I'm trying to analyze, you know, oh, this person's going to be moving this way. This is going to be like, you know, how can I dodge? You know, I'm really in the moment. And so I think that's why I really appreciate sports in that sense. But from your definition, that would mean that that is a meditation. Maybe one could argue that. I don't know. But like that also to me is also like putting a distraction in front of you. Because like if you're doing something, if you're trying to reflect on something else, that in itself is occupying your mind. When you literally just have to sit with yourself and your entire goal is to not think about something, like the polar bears in the room, don't think about the polar bear, don't think about the polar bear, your mind has a lot of difficulties to just sit there and do nothing, if you know what I mean. So I'm not saying there's not value in either of those, of like sitting in your car, you know, maybe you were this morning when you were waiting for me, you know, reflecting on life, meditating on some of the accomplishments and the direction that you want to go, et cetera, et cetera. There's definitely, I think, a lot of value in that as well. But I think that, you know, trying to implement a intense and extreme level of stillness within your mind, I think is a good way to really push that resetting envelope, that resetting standard, to really clean the plate, right? Because when you think about it, when you eat out of a dish, what do? You clean the dish, and then you can eat out of it a new dish, right? Imagine when you think about it, imagine you were to eat spaghetti, and then you don't clean it, and then you put curry, and you...
God, I hate that. I hate just the concept of mixing food. I don't like that. I love pairing food. so the concept of like mixing foods that are like vastly different, even just like if a little grain of rice or something like that from my last dish is like on the new dish, I hate that. Like,
right. And
sorry.
No, and
touch the nerve.
no, that's fair. And I agree. I'm the kind of guy who likes to eat a lot of different things, but like if they mix on the same plate, it starts to get on my nerves. But you know, what if like there was, and then you have a cake that's on the plate as well, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like what I'm saying is that like when we're not resetting by cleaning the plate, by stillness, and meditation's a good example. And mind you, like I don't meditate every day. I wish I did. You know, so I'm saying this out of just observation, but when you actually think about it that way, you're not resetting the plate. You're not allowing yourself, like, you know what it is to like show up to a desk and it's full of clutter, and you're trying to put down like a laptop, and you're like, ooh, and then you knock something down, oh shit, and then you got to clean this, you know, like there's a lot of like clutter and stuff that is there because you didn't allow yourself to reset. So like obviously like doing things like cleaning your place, your desk, your desktop, your, you know, but also clearing the mind, clearing the heart, whether that means journaling, therapy, counseling, walks, exercise. I think that these are all good ways that we can reset our minds, and hopefully more frequently than every year. But I think that the new year definitely gives a good opportunity for that.
I just want to add, like, you know, that's why there's a distinction between meditation versus a distraction, right? And you'd mentioned things like sports, or even something that seems meditative, like driving, right? Like I used to love going for a drive and listening to music in order to get my mind off of things or get a breath of fresh air, right? But the very act of meditation and mindfully meditating and actively knowing that you're meditating is literally the act you indulge in order to empty your mind and prepare yourself for the present, or to prepare yourself to receive the present, right? Whereas if you were, you know, doing sports, while it may distract you from the things that are it may distract you from the things that might be bothering you, or the things that you want to empty out. What it is doing is you are occupying yourself with another task rather than emptying, right? Because as soon as you finish doing your sports, you still got to deal with the shit that's in your mind. You know, you still got to deal with everything you just pushed down in order to indulge in the act of doing sports, right? But I just, yeah, again, I just want to make the distinction between a distraction and meditation.
Yeah,
Right.
no, and I think that's a fair point, and I don't think like a lot of people who are like sports fans are like, what, sports isn't a distraction. There's definitely value in again, sports, exercise, everything. Like I don't think that was your point. I think that you're just illustrating that like sometimes it can create a distraction rather than. Anyways, I just wanted to clarify that because I know that's not your intention. So,
and I know that distractions can be useful. For sure.
Oh, that's a dangerous. Oh man, that's a topic in its own right there.
I know, and it's not something I say without having my own, negative connotations towards, because I think at the end of the day, most of the time, distractions are exactly that. They take you away from the path you're supposed to be on and the things you should be doing, right?
Supposed to be on.
So yeah, well, supposedly supposed to be on. That being said, and you've touched on this with the whole problem with productivity. I remember the guys from Yes Theory literally talking about how they had accomplished this, and this, and that, and they had not allowed themselves the time to enjoy their accomplishments because of how much they had been giving to productivity and trying to stay busy and trying to stay active. And it just gets stressful because it's like, what use are your accomplishments if you can't celebrate them, right? And tying this into distractions, I mean, like, not exactly the best tie into distractions, but the thing is, like, allowing yourself a bit of free time to just do anything other than what you've been keeping yourself busy with the most is very important and can be very useful and can be a great way to, essentially take your mind off of it, and then when you come back to it, it's just like, oh hey, all of a sudden I have a fresh perspective on what I'm doing. Many of the time I've had to stop producing a song that I had been spending way too much time on and making no progress on, gone out, done something else, come back, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, that's what I was missing, there it is.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if I mentioned it at the beginning of this podcast, but it's something that I'm trying to do a little bit more is, and I think it falls back to intentionally placing that time. If it becomes something that's out of hand, it becomes something that's unhealthy, right? Distractions, as we know, has a negative connotation. So I think that as long as your intention's behind the distraction and you're actively monitoring it and you're using it to enjoy the distraction and not beat yourself up about not being productive, I think will definitely benefit you. But
for sure, again, you do have to be extremely wary of because distractions are an indulgence. It really is, right? Especially if you're aware that that's exactly what they are, right? Like I could go to a buffet and eat as much as I want until I'm full 3 times over. Versus me going and just preparing myself a decent meal upstairs and eating like 1 plate of rice and like a little bit on the side, knowing full well that that's going to get me full, that sort of thing. Right. I would just, caution, like exercise any sort of caution when you, indulge in a distraction, obviously. Right. Like, especially if, you're a goal oriented person, like Vince and I, right? Like, being aware of what is distraction or what is an actual distraction and something that you are just like, I know for us, we use our distractions as a way to give ourselves a break from, the productivity spiral. And I only call it a spiral because like sometimes you just spend so much time on something that is in alignment with your craft, but then, you do burn out, right? And you do need a little bit of time for yourself to recuperate. And right?
I think it goes back to, just to wrap this up, I think it goes back to reflection. If you're never going to catch those distractions if you're not actively thinking about it, if you're not meditating about it, if you're not, cleaning that plate, if you're not taking the time to reflect, you are going to let yourself distracted. And I think that's a good way to go into 2021, try to eliminate the distractions, trying to really just, be you. And how do you do you by not being distracted, by, being in the here and now. And, all that I think stems really from reflecting, I think that reflection is something that allows for resetting. It allows for coming back a stronger you. And like I said earlier, I don't think that we should wait till the end of the year to be able to allow that to happen. So
No, for sure. I 100% agree with you. Like, I think that going into the new year, and I'm not even just going into the new year, just if you need to just go into a different way of thinking about things in terms of resetting, don't let the fact that we made it into the next year be the reason that you decide to reset, reconstruct, and reiterate the things that you need to, right? You should find a way, you should find a way to make sure that you are always able to continuously improve, continuously check yourself pretty much. And also at the same time, like, just trying your best to, like, just continuously be a better you every single time, right? Yeah, I don't know. 2021 is going to be an interesting year.
looking forward to it.
Interesting year.
Looking forward to it, my guy. I hate to break this up, but I'm fully depleted out of coffee. And speaking of withdrawals, there's a major one happening right now. So,
all right, man.
I'm going to catch you in the next one.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.